The fine manipulative qualities of the hand was still much more important, and I believe really quite fervently, to the point of having applied it both to my children and my grandchildren, that producing children which are, this is actually the wrong slide I've got. Of course, if you make products of much greater quality and durability, you will get bored with them. So another design feature would be what I called makeoverability, which means that fairly trivial changes can make the product appear different. It's really rather like having your marvelous simple black dress and taking it along to the lady on the corner and having a flower put on here and having the hem shortened a little bit, and suddenly, without really much material expenditure or even financial expenditure, you have a new dress. But I would like products to have this property. It is already used by an advertisement which I found in a newspaper a few days ago, where you can effectively get a new kitchen merely by changing the fronts of the doors and the cupboards. And this is really a form of making over, which a much greater range of products will have to exhibit in the future. And then we have a third requirement, which is very much a hobby horse of mine. And that is that we put this marvelous device completely to discount. Our hands next to our brains are really the most valuable part of our design. And I believe that Homo sapiens, who arrived in the scene really rather quickly, having branched off from its ancestors, was due to the fact that tool making really required the continuous virtuous circle collaboration between hand, eye and brain. Hand, eye and brain always working, and every revolution of this process really improving not only the product, because it's really quite difficult to make a tool which makes a tool, which maybe makes another tool, which is finally used to make whatever you want to do. This requires a degree of imagination and extrapolation in one's mind, which, as far as I'm aware, no animal is even remotely capable of. So keeping this virtuous circle intact, I think, is very important. And I believe that some of the really major failures in human competence which seem to litter our lives and our society are due to the fact that we've relegated the action of this marvelous tool to pressing keys on a keyboard, rather than threading needles or sewing on buttons or doing mechanical sets or doing watchmaking, all the things which we are really very good at. And what I call a very ugly word, the de-dexterization. Being dexterous means being good with your hands. And I can tell you a quick anecdote. I've got two sons, and from the age of 3, they each had a workbench. And I made the workbench with telescopic legs, so that as the children grew, the workbench would also grow. But they were furnished with proper adult tools. And when relations came along and said, "Isn't this terribly dangerous?" I would say that even a 3-year-old stopped sawing before the finger fell right off. And I was entirely justified in this assumption. So I think that the future designers may have to become conscious of the anthropological history of people to a much greater extent, and say that manipulation is really something which is an essential part of the learning process, and that new products ought to be designed in such a way that a degree of skill is required for their use, but preferably manipulative skill. And this will make not only the product perhaps more attractive to people, because it fulfills one of the necessities built into us, but it will also keep alive this marvelous cycle of eye, hand and brain. And the way the word I coined for that is that children, or adults for that matter, should not only be articulate, they should also be manipulate. Not manipulative, as women are alleged to be, but manipulate. So that's what I want all of you to do, and maybe some of these executive toys have this function. Now this also rears its head in the way in which children are taught science at school. Science at school has become so boring that it's really quite difficult to get young people to go to university to teach science subjects, or even to take science in the upper parts of school. And this is because it is not recognized sufficiently that science, certainly at the inspirational stage, when people choose their careers and make plans, is as much an experience and manipulation and practice and nasty smells and the flames and things of this kind. It is essentially something which is practical, not something which appears on a blackboard. And so to have science, or physics and chemistry or technology taught as something which is essentially where eyes and hands are being used and the brain is put into gear occasionally, would, I'm sure, increase the number of candidates we have for science courses. Now, what kind of product would I like to see to happen in the future? What should all these designers do? Well, I happen to work a lot in the health and social sciences, and I'm very conscious how utterly anti-ergonomic a pill is. If you think of it, you have an elderly gentleman or an elderly lady who can't see very well, memory isn't so good, and there you present her with a blister pack of 28 pills, which may be yellow one week and maybe green the next week because they're generics, they're difficult to extract, they jump all over the place, and it really is such a mismatch between the product and the person that should not be allowed. We've done some experiments, and certainly as a majority of drugs are only taken in milligram quantities, it would be possible to print one's pills. In fact, we've shown this using a color printer and putting drugs or drug-like substances into the ink tanks, which have the different colors. You could have the 10 most common drugs taken by old people, all in a multi-channel color printer, and you could print pills to order with the area of say, the red color, which happens to be the digitalis containing drug, being proportional to the dose. So you could even have some automatic checking of whether the pill was correct. And you dispense these like cigarette papers, where merely put all Bronco toilet paper, as it used to be in my youth. So that's putting one out, presents the next one, or you could even order them. So if lunchtime pills were different from evening pills, they could come out as a packaging in the right sort of order. Now that, I think, is a truly ergonomic product, which you perhaps ought to think about. And here's another one. We build a house, an intelligent house, which people who may possibly live by themselves live in, and the house talks to them, and it knows where they are, and it knows when they're in bed, and it argues with them, because if they're doing something which could be potentially dangerous, the house tries to talk them out of doing it and to apply a remedy, and only if it fails to do so does it call for further assistance. Well, if I have a house, you have to be able to get through the front door. And really, ask yourself the question, isn't it silly to expect people who may well have a shaking hand, not very good eyesight, on an ill-lit landing, to insert a thin sliver of metal into a keyhole, and then to apply a good deal of torque with an arthritic wrist, because you haven't got much of a lever, to get to their own front door? It's just bloody silly, isn't it? Yet 99.9% of all people get into their homes this way. On our intelligent house, we use a thing called an I button, which you see on your right, which only has to be touched, something which looks rather like a bell push, and which can be put on the bunch of keys so that it exhibits cultural continuity with the kind of things which people do. And you merely touch it, and the locks unlock, and no two of these things are the same. They have a number in them, essentially, and if you go and lose your device, your I button, which incidentally only costs 99 pence to replace, the lock can be programmed to the new number, and the fact that somebody else may have picked up the I button is of no consequence. In fact, our locks are cleverer than that, in that they might have a whole range of people they let in, and this range can well change. If the house raises an alarm, a different set of people may be permitted to get through the lock, because you then want social workers and firemen and so on to be able to get in as well. Again, a truly ergonomic product. And this one here, there's really a lot of money in this. You'll be aware that texting proved to be tremendous